We've got an expert view on the ongoing situation at Reading, while a big win for Wrexham is a standout of only 6 League One games this weekend. Welcome to the League One Lowdown. Hello and welcome to the League One Lowdown, brought to you from the Deck Podcast Network. This is the review episode. Seb Jones alongside Jamie Johnson as ever. Jamie, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Seb. How are you?
Yes, good, thank you. Yeah, very good as well. Obviously, I featured covered for Sam on the preview episode, so apologies that you have to listen to my dulcet tones for the second time this week. But I'm in the usual spot, and rest assured, Sam will be back later on in the week with Callum. But yeah, back ready to chat a lot about the games at the weekend. A limited amount, as I mentioned in the little teaser opener, limited amount due to the international break. We've seen a few of the League One games called off, so it will mean we'll have a deep dive of all the games that took place over the weekend. But we're going to start with matters off the pitch and off away from any results at the weekend, and that is the situation at Reading Football Club. The EFL released a statement just a few days ago, and rather than us guys, me and Jamie, discussing this, we thought we'd bring in a Reading expert. So earlier on, before we start recording, Jamie caught up with Andy Preston, who is the Reading.today editor, and here he is.
So, Andy, first of all, thank you for joining me. How do we find you on this Sunday morning?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Thank you for having me. I wish it could be in better circumstances for what we're about to talk about, but that's what Reading fans have had to get used to over the last couple of years. Unfortunately, it's been a horrible situation, one that looks to be coming to a head now, but worrying times ahead, really.
Yeah, I mean, you've alluded to it all there, really. We'll talk first about sort of how we've got to where we are now, and then go into the new information, if you like, from the court case last week. So can you give us an overview of how and why we find ourselves where we do now, leading up to this court case last week?
Yeah, so this has been going on for well over 500 days now since De Jong, the owner, first officially put the club up for sale. There's been many parties have tried to negotiate over that time and have been in exclusivity. None of them have got, well, some have got far, some have not got very far at all. The furthest along last year was Rob Couhig, former Wycombe Wanderers chairman, who wanted to buy the club. It looked like the deal was all done. He was pictured at the stadium. He was there for a game last year. It looked like that was all signed and delivered until very late on. Allegedly De Jong changed the conditions of the deal, which led to a breakdown in negotiations, and that's led us to this mess we're in now, where both parties are facing a legal battle against each other. So Rob Couhig is suing De Jong for loss of potential profits of more than £12 million, whereas De Jong he tried to, in the court case last week, take out an injunction against Rob Couhig. We then had the court ruling last week, which I'm sure we'll go into.
Yeah, I mean, you take us onto it nicely there. The court ruling on Friday. I mean, the headline of it is that the deadline has been set for April 5th, hasn't it? That's sort of the main takeaway. But there's obviously a process that will lead up to that date now.
Yeah, so the EFL tried to disqualify De Jong last year. That went to an independent panel, which found that they couldn't disqualify him. However, this time in the court ruling, which happened on Friday, we found out that the EFL have disqualified De Jong now. And like you say, that date now is set for April 4th for him to sell the club. If that's not achieved, then we get into a scenario where the club has 30 days to be sold, and worst case scenario is that they could be expelled from the English Football League. That sounds very dramatic and is very scary. But I think that's what it's come to now. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but those are the serious ramifications of what could happen.
I mean, as someone who's covered Reading for over 5 years now, and we talked a little bit off air, you've got sort of family connections, you've been around Reading Football Club for a long time. It must be awful for you and obviously all the other fans of the club as well, that this threat even will go into how likely or unlikely it is. But the fact that threat exists is obviously sort of traumatic, if you like, for the fans.
It really is. It's unbelievable to think, really. When I was growing up, watching Reading, I think they were well renowned as a club that was always run so well under John Medeski, a club that didn't spend above their means, punched above their weight, if you like. They always had a good infrastructure there with the stadium since the late 90s. But what John Medeski did was build on a budget. And, they've been in the Premier League a couple of times, only just over a decade ago, last in the Premier League. So it's so scary to think what's happened in the last decade under Da Yong, how badly it's gone. Now the threat of them not being in the Football League, it's really hard to take. It's unbelievable that anyone could think that their club could be out of existence. Like you say, it's so traumatic for the fans, and it's all that's been consumed them for the last couple of years. You speak to the fans or people outside of Reading, and all they ask is, what's happening with the takeover? And it's something that everyone's desperate to know. The communication has not been there from anyone involved in the sale throughout the whole time. That's been such a frustration for us in the local media. Nigel Howe, who's involved with the club during some of the good times under John Medeski, has been tasked with overseeing the sale. But his reputation really right now is in tatters. Having done so much good work under John Medeski in the times of the club being in the Premier League, he's working under Da Yong, and his communication style has been next to nothing for the whole entire time that the club's been up for sale. He's done one interview with us in the local media at the back end of last year, I believe September, and that was quite honestly one of the most frustrating interviews I've ever done. It was, we came out of it with probably having more questions than we did going into it, to be honest. And that's just been the style throughout the whole thing, which has been such frustration. We saw the club release some communication on Friday about the court case, which was very vague, to be honest. I'm not sure there's too much they can say at this time. But right now, the fans need some reassurance because it's such scary times and unprecedented, really, what could happen.
I mean, you mentioned it there. I mean, obviously, I think you get sort of like a microcosm of the fan base in terms of who's on social media, but there was a lot of bad reaction to the statement you alluded to there, being quite short, quite vague, as you alluded to, and that it doesn't help the situation, does it, when fans are struggling to see what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been a frustration throughout the whole time, as I'd mentioned. The club has committed to, I think it's about 3 months ago now, committed to releasing monthly updates on the takeover process. And, the last couple of them have actually been quite detailed and reassuring for fans to actually get some information and detail of the process. I think with this one, this isn't a knock on any of the staff at the club because I think they're just so limited to what they can say. This is more about the communication that should be coming from the higher ups at the club. It's been so poor. We've never once heard from Da Yong and his whole reign at Reading. The CEO, Dion Pang, I don't think he's ever done an interview with anyone. He spoke on TalkSport very, very briefly, probably about a year ago now. And, that just seemed to cause more frustration in the fan base because, basically what he said was be more patient to the fans. And I don't think they could show any more patience if they tried. It's, this whole process has been awful. The fans deserve so much more for the commitment they've given to the club and the patience they've shown. You have to give a word to the playing staff as well because they've been amazing throughout all this. The fact that Reading are still in a position where they could get promoted. No, it's unlikely. I think they're working with a very thin squad. Obviously, Ruben Sellers left halfway through the season. But, again and again, they've shown resilience to be out there. So the situation the club is in is just an absolute mess.
Yeah, I know when Ruben Sellers left, we were expecting them to sort of slide down the table a little bit, but they've stayed in that mix, haven't they? And they're so close to the playoffs, and maybe that's even more surprising with everything else going, sort of the noise around it, that the players are being able to sort of shut that out. But I guess it's a really awful question to sort of put it like this, but how likely or unlikely is it that once they reach the deadline in April that the club could be under threat of being kicked from the EFL?
It's so difficult to say. If you look at it overall, the club's been up for sale for over 500 days. So, you put a deadline of April the 4th and, just putting 2 and 2 together, it seems unlikely that anything's going to be resolved by then. They're in an exclusivity period with an American businessman called Robert Plasek. We'd all love to know what his thoughts are on everything that's going on now and how much he knew. You'd hope he'd know a lot of the detail before he even got into negotiations to buy the club. But yeah, if we get into that period where the club could face being expelled from the Football League, that's extremely scary. I think the EFL have to be very careful because, ultimately it's their fault that De Jong took over the club in the first place. So they have to take some responsibility for that. I know that they're as desperate as anyone to see the back of him now, but they do have to take some responsibility for him being there in the first place, especially, if you go into the history of him, he tried to buy Hull City before he purchased Reading when Hull were in the Premier League, and he didn't pass the fit owners test. So, it raises a question as to how he was ever allowed to buy Reading in the first place. I think the EFL have to be very careful. They can't see Reading be expelled. It would just be an awful, awful look for them.
And I guess finally, to sort of try and end as much as we can on a positive, what could happen in the next few weeks, months, if you like, that what needs to happen, I guess is the right way of phrasing it, to solve the situation?
Yeah, so the timeline we're looking at now is that we need a deal to be agreed in principle. And most likely that's going to be with Robert Plasek. And as the judge ruled on Friday, he kind of set out the parameters of what needs to happen. So the idea is that an escrow amount is agreed with Rob Couhig. So essentially some money set aside to be paid to him in legal damages once a deal's been agreed for a takeover to be completed. And the club mentioned in their statement on Friday that they look forward to negotiating, I believe the term was, with Rob Couhig to find a solution. That's what we can hope for now, because as Friday went, I think the club were probably expecting it to go a different way. And we're hoping that it will be resolved and it will be a straightforward process. But the judge, I guess the one optimistic thing that did come out is the judge ruled that this process shouldn't block a sale going through. So, an amount needs to be agreed now between the parties.
Well, thank you for joining us, Andy. Hopefully we can get you back on and it'll be a bit happier news if obviously everything we want to happen and yourselves at the club want to happen, that we can get you back on with something a bit more positive to talk about. But thanks for your time and sort of explaining it very succinctly for us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks once again to Andy for speaking to us at the League One Lowdown. Jamie, what do you take away from that conversation? What we thought the main points that Andy covered, and certainly interesting times for Reading at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, to echo what you said there, yeah, thanks to Andy for coming on and giving us that expert view on it, because obviously we wanted, and it's right that we do cover it, but we wanted to make sure we were right in everything that we were saying, and getting on someone like Andy, who has been in and around that situation for us the whole time it's been going on, is obviously a great help to us and to the listeners, viewers as well. So, I mean, the main takeaway being that deadline's been set now, hasn't it? And there is that threat hanging over Reading that being expelled from the EFL is a very distinct possibility. And it's perhaps Andy was saying there that it's not likely, it's not unlikely. It just sort of depends what happens in terms of this potential sale, and the positive he ended on in terms of it being that there's nothing in place to stop the sale at the minute, and it's all now about making sure that happens, and the clock's ticking, isn't it? And it would just be awful, really. I mean, for any club to fall from the EFL. I know Bury did it not too long ago, and to see that happen again, and for very similar sort of reasons. So it's ownership, isn't it? And it would be a real travesty for that to happen to any club, and Reading in this situation. That the fans have been through the mill, haven't they? So hopefully it does resolve itself, and there is that glimmer of hope, isn't there, with the potential buyer being there and in exclusivity talks with what Andy said there. So yeah, hopefully it resolves itself, but yeah, they're not out of the woods yet, Reading, in terms of the off the field situation. So yeah, we just hope for the fans, really, and for everyone involved with the club and the playing staff, the players, how well they've been doing this season, as we mentioned when I spoke to Andy, in terms of how well they've sort of just carried on through it all, that it gets resolved for all of them, and they can just get out of this awful, really awful situation that they're in.
Yeah, for sure. Echo those thoughts. Obviously, on the pitch, it's actually been quite a good season for Reading. Still in and amongst it all, but just off the pitch, just worrying times. But we hope good news can come out of the club very, very soon. We move on to matters on the pitch and results from the weekend. And I guess only one goal in this one, but it's the big one. Me and Callum spoke about in our previous one, sort of the game of the weekend, if you like. I know we had a reduced roster to choose from, but certainly a big one between Wrexham and Stockport. Both came up from League Two, both at the top end of League One. One goal that sealed it. Maybe it was a goal that shouldn't have been given, Jamie.
Yes, I mean, you put me on very nice. I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm expecting a little bit of stick in terms of the things I said about Wrexham and Charlton last week. So.
Yeah, the amount of times I've watched this goal on highlights and seen it, I'm just baffled. But we'll come on to it after you've gone. Well, you let you see your piece, and then I will speak my words as well.
Yeah, I mean, for anyone that hasn't seen it, in terms of the penalty that was given, I guess we'll come on to that in a sec, because the game itself, it's obviously massive for Wrexham. They've just lost one of their last 6 games since they were kicked from the EFL trophy with defeat to Peterborough, who we're going to talk about in our next game. All 4 of the wins in that have been by 1-0. They lost 2-0 to Reading, who we've just spoken about, and a goalless draw in there as well. So they're not scoring very many, but very importantly, they're keeping goals out. And to be hard to beat is crucial when you're pushing for anything, but especially at the top of the table. If you're hard to break down, you're halfway there, aren't you? And Stockport seemed to control the game in terms of the people I spoke to that were there, and despite dominance, just struggled to break Wrexham down. And Wrexham had the one big chance in terms of the penalty, and that brought the goal. It was originally saved by the goalkeeper, but the rebound went in, and that's the main talking point from the game, obviously, is that penalty decision. It was a handball given, I think given by James McLean, the amount of complaining he was doing. Even since the ball came out to him and he whipped in a cross, and the defender in front of him, his arm was in the air, but he's about 1 yard away from the ball where the ball was kicked. So I don't know really where he's meant to go. And I think what's more egregious than the actual decision being made, because you see these sort of decisions all the time, and we're going to talk about a dodgy handball decision that wasn't given in the Lincoln game, in our last match we'll talk about today. But the egregious bit for me is the fact that it wasn't given, and then the really ferocious complaints, the referee goes over to his linesman, and then they give it. It was if they've heard the complaints, and James McLean going absolutely bananas over it. And they've gone home and go, well, should we give it then? If they're complaining this much, well, it probably is a penalty. And they've gone and give the penalty. That's what it looked like for me.
Yeah.
And that's the egregious bit, I think, is that seemed that the outward pressure for one of the players putting the pressure on the officials has done the job in terms of that penalty being awarded, which is a shame, because you don't want to see a big game like this tied and done on a bit of a dodgy decision. But yeah, what do you think to it?
Yeah, I fully agree. I think Stockport can count themselves really unlucky. As you said, sort of, created a couple of good chances against a good Wrexham side, but just couldn't quite break them down enough to get that opportunity perhaps on goal. But yeah, where the only goal of the game came from, I get the referee and linesmen have not seen it, but then the continuation of I guess complaining from James McLean. The players are all in. The referee gave a corner from the reflection off the hand. I guess it was a handball, but you're right into the distance. I'm not quite sure what else he's good at. He jumped up, the arm is out. When you naturally jump up, the arm comes out anyway. So I get it was handball, but certainly not. Nothing it could do. All the players got for the corner that was awarded, and then it's almost as if just as about the corner is about to be taken, the referee comes across the linesman, and between them they talk and then they give it. But I think if the linesman is so confident that there is a handball, he should wave the flag in the first place.
Yeah.
He should call it in the first place. You referee, the amount of players in the way. The linesman, he's on the right hand side, just in front of the linesman.
Yeah, the linesman's got the best view.
Yeah. And if he is confident, he has to flag for it straight away and give the penalty, rather than having such a farce of all the players going up ready for the corner to be taken, and then the referee going across the line or to discuss, James McLean shouting at the both of them, and then the referee awarding the penalty in the end. I think it's farcical, really. I really don't get it. Like, I'm not sure. As I said, the assistant referee has got to have the confidence to give it, and he doesn't. And if he's clearly converted the referee's mind, well, why is he not just stuck with his own decision in the first place if he believes it's handball? But I think it's harsh on the Stockport defender covering there, and James McLean has evidently, as you said, sort of earned Wrexham a goal there, really.
Yeah, no, I think that's the way of seeing it, really. And I guess before we move on, it's worth talking about Stockport's side of the situation. And they've won just one of their last four now, and they are out of that automatic promotion race. They're very firmly sort of on the periphery of that. But regardless, it's still a cracking season, and they're in the playoff spots. And if they can keep themselves in there, it's been a superb season. And who knows what will happen in the post-season lottery, as it's often called.
Well,
So yeah, Stockport have had a good season on a little bit of a bad run, and it's at a bad time, isn't it, to hit that? But yeah, it seemed a game sort of lacking quality, lacking excitement in terms of the forward play, and Wrexham got the one goal in it.
Yeah, and it was a goal from Jay Rodriguez. As you mentioned, missed the original penalty, but then took in the rebound after Crawley saved. So Wrexham went away with that one, and they leapfrogged Wycombe, who didn't play at the weekend, to go into second place in the table. Stockport, meanwhile, stay fifth, as you said, well in and amongst that playoff pack at the moment. And the next game we're going to move on to chat about is the one between Peterborough and Charlton Athletic. Charlton, we mentioned this, me and Callum mentioned this on the preview podcast as well. One of the form sides in the division have just been going from strength to strength, really, under Nathan Jones. But it went wrong at the weekend, Jamie.
Yes, it did. They didn't put the chances away, and that is the top and bottom of it, really. The way I look at it, they had really early chances. Matty Godden probably should have scored. They hit the bar from a corner. There was a tapping at the back post that was just the wrong side of the post for them, and those sort of little moments like that were all going the wrong way for them, and they were made to pay for that. And Peterborough played really well. I mean, one brought two in terms of their early goals. You don't see many indirect free kicks.
No, you don't, yeah.
What it led to a goal that not directly, it didn't go straight in, but it deflected around and the ball recycled in and Hughes put it in the back of the net. And they looked really good, did Peterborough. They obviously, you watch the highlight packages and it shows obviously the main moments, but there were more Peterborough moments than there were Charlton. And they got the 3 goals that reflects that. And I thought the interesting thing to bring out of it was just how electric Poku looked in those moments, and he got himself an assist for that Hughes goal that got things rolling. And he's electric when he's playing and in fine form, and those sort of magic feet were doing all the talking in this one. And they're 8 without defeat now at Peterborough, and up to 15th. I mean, we had them down in the relegation zone not too long ago, and a good run. It looks like a good run puts you with Poku coming back as well now, and everything's looking up for them. And yeah, as I say, up to 15th. And I guess we'll come on to Charlton. But yeah, Peterborough obviously take the plaudits for really capable performance, playing really well, and Charlton, ruin those missed chances, because, I mean, how much does a game turn around if you score the first goal? It's a completely different game. But missed chances, and Peterborough took advantage.
Yeah, you mentioned that indirect free kick. I've seen quite a few clips of that sort of bobbling about, and it's a miracle they don't score from the first attempt. But then in the end, they do make do. As you say, Poker with the cross from outside the area, and there's huge sort of comes in. No one really sees him coming in, but at the far post, he's just heading. And then you're right in terms of Peterborough going from strength to strength, grabbing a goal just of less than 5 minutes later on, and then they're going into the half to break 2-0, and it's a completely different story. Mounted to climb for Charlton. Peterborough got the home advantage, and I think this is a really good result for Peterborough. I think Charlton will be massively disappointed. We'll come on to that in a second, but Peterborough can absolutely be really happy with the result, and that does mean again that they continue their good run of form. They are now 6 unbeaten, 3 wins and 3 draws in that as well, and you're looking fine and dandy, really. That's league, by the way, 6 unbeaten in the league, and I guess as well with that, they got through to the EFL Trophy final. So actually, things are looking pretty good for Peterborough under Darren Ferguson at the minute, having had such sort of a disappointing season overall. You're right in terms of they've got themselves out of that fight at the bottom. They will probably finish back mid-table this season, but considering how things were looking at times this season, it was looking pretty bleak. As for Charlton, where do we start, Jimmy? Lots to digest. They'll be disappointed. I guess the positive is that the result hasn't affected their position. They're still 4th in the table, which is very strong. Wycombe didn't play, and they're in 3rd. So, when they do play the game in hand, then Wycombe could extend their advantage on Charlton. But for now, that they stay 4th, league position relatively happy, but performance, Nathan Jones has got to be really disappointed with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to be disappointed in terms of the conversion. That was the issue for me that I saw, in terms of they were creating enough, especially in that first half, and just weren't putting any of them away. And it leaves them 8 points away from the automatic spots, which is a big sort of hill to climb with so little of the season to go. And it ends their unbeaten run. They had 5 wins and a draw in their last 6, and sort of hit a real stumbling block in this game, and have been rocked back by it. I mean, Peterborough are a good side. I mean, I saw them. I know we talked about it on the podcast a few weeks ago. I went to see them against Shrewsbury, and I was really impressed by them. And I've been impressed by them ever since. They've been playing some really good football, and that continued here. And they sort of just caught Charlton in a little bit of a storm. It seemed like Charlton didn't really know whether to be here or there in terms of how to deal with that bang bang of the early, like the goals straight after one another in the first half. So they've got some work to do in these next few games if they are going to keep those hopes of automatic promotion alive. But if anyone's going to be able to turn them around, it's a Nathan Jones figure, isn't it? That it can sort of galvanise that dressing room and keep them pushing. But the playoffs, if you finish top 4, obviously you get the home playoff 3rd and 4th, so the home playoff 2nd leg, so that's obviously an incentive as well. But they'll keep pushing, and I don't think it's over yet for them.
No, and I guess it does tell a story when the team that have beaten a game 3-0, obviously 3 different goal scorers. It does tell a story when the goalkeeper of that team has got man of the match, Jed Steer in the Peterborough goal, 6 saves, denying chances from Charlton to maintain that clean sheet. So as much as sort of Charlton couldn't score, I guess we do have to credit Steer in the Peterborough goal, despite the 3 different players on the score sheet. Interesting one. Don't see that too often. No. We will take a short break now, and then we'll be back after this one to discuss the other 4 games that took place on Saturday. Hello and welcome back to the League One Lowdown review episode.
Well, the voice was struggling there, wasn't it?
It was a little bit, but we were going to power through. It's myself, Seb Jones. Yeah, it was struggling. Myself, Seb Jones, joined by Jamie Johnson as ever. We're going to move on to chat about the other 4 games that took place on Saturday, and we'll start with the game between Crawley Town and Bristol Rovers. We'll come on to off-field matters in terms of new managerial appointment for Crawley in a second, but the result itself, Crawley won at home. Not
They
bad
did.
going, is it?
No, it's a good result. This, I mean, you obviously spoke about Scott Lindsay in the previous show last week, covering for Sam. But I guess, give my sort of limited thoughts on that in a second. But Crawley had the chances and took them. It's a very similar story in terms of the Peterborough Charlton game, in that perhaps the difference being that Bristol Rovers didn't create anything in this one, and Crawley they missed a really golden opportunity actually when they were 1-0 up to double that advantage, but they carried on and they saw out the victory, and that new manager bounce has been felt, hasn't it? And in the first half, they seemed to really be going after it, and they had 2 or 3 chances, all very similar, and one of them brought the goal. So it's got to be an impressive display in terms of what Scott Lindsay would have been wanting and what he's got out of his team in that respect. As for Bristol Rovers, I guess a very sort of brief word on them. I mean, they're not out of the woods at all. They're very much in that relegation mix, because I mean the gap to Burton could close if Burton win their game, and Han now obviously not playing this weekend. I think it's only 6 points, the gap between themselves and Burton, and game in hand makes that 3, and then it's suddenly 1 game, isn't it? And then it's all turned around, and they never got going in this game. They were awful in the first half, improved in the second, but still poor, and they were shocking against Lincoln last week, and that seems to have continued into this one. And they need to turn it around quickly, otherwise they will keep slipping. And a team like Burton are picking up points and are grinding out results. And if Bristol Rovers don't turn it around quickly, they won't be grinding out the results they need to. But to swing it back to Crawley, I mentioned the new manager bounce. It's the first win in 9 games, their first clean sheet in 12, and all it took was getting Scott Lindsay back.
Well, certainly so. Yeah. Scott Lindsay, as you said, on his return to Crawley, and I don't think he could have asked for a better start. You know, a win at home, as I mentioned, clean sheet at home, and he really couldn't have got off better. Interesting, sort of, I guess, him coming back to the club. You know, having left just a few months ago, and then he returned to the sort of. He knows what it's all about. Managing Crawley, being in charge of them. It's not gone their way this season, and I think he'll be the first to admit that. You know, 3rd from bottom of the League One table, the chances are looking less and less, if we are being perfectly honest. But he'll restore some pride, he'll restore some passion in the players, and he'll pick up the odd good result, and that's exactly what he's done at the weekend. Yes, a win is not going to do that much for Crawley, but actually it does. As you said, it brings Bristol Rovers right into the mix, and really interesting. The appointment was an interesting one, I think. Second stint of the season. You know, I guess he left on his own terms and then came back. I don't. It's all a bit funny for me.
It's a strange one, isn't it? I mean,
it's a strange one. Yeah,
so quickly. I don't know the last time I saw a manager have 2 stints in the same season at a club.
Exactly. Yeah. And in between that, was at a different club as well. Like and did a
poor job. I mean, he was really struggling at MK Dons. I mean, the win rate was 34%, and I mean that's not good for an MK Dons team who were wanting to be in the playoffs at the very least, and they were really down the bottom end of the table, and he was struggling. He was really struggling at MK Dons, but he's back now and immediately winning his first game. So perhaps it's a bit of that Gareth Ainsworth situation, isn't it? He could only do it at Wycombe. Perhaps he can only do it at Crawley. But yeah, I mean, I just to bounce off what you said on the preview podcast briefly, just that you said it was sort of. I hope I'm paraphrasing you correctly, but building for next season and having one eye on next season, and I think that's exactly the same. In terms of what I think about it, in that this appointment, as much as obviously they want to stay up and they'll do everything they can to stay up, there's an eye on next season and on a Scott Lindsay being able to rebuild that team next year and come back as sort of the saviour and try and get them back up next year, replicate that unlikely promotion they managed this time last year. So that's how I see it, very similar to yourself and Callum.
Yeah, and some sort of thing, sort of restoring a bit of pride in the back end of the season and to then go again in the summer. Yeah, exactly that. But they've got 3 points to cheer about, rare 3 points it may be. First win in 9, as you said, and first clean sheet in 12 for Crawley Town. So, yes, we'll move on to chat about Northampton and Blackpool. Blackpool continuing their good run of form, perhaps sparking a late playoff run, maybe. Fletcher and Ennis with the goals. I guess you're laughing there, disagreed with my statement, Jamie?
Yeah, I think we talked about it last week, didn't we? That we were writing off Blackpool and Barnsley. I think they're in the same sort of mix.
I'm just trying to add a bit of jeopardy, and we're not even in April yet. I'm just trying to add a bit of.
Well, I know this is the thing. I
mean, to the end of the season, a bit of excitement,
Yeah, it's a weird league, isn't it? I mean, there's still a lot of decisions to be made and a lot of permutations that could come out of it. But yeah, I mean, things seem to be tying up quite early and condensing. There's only a few teams chasing for certain spots, as perhaps there was a lot more chasing just a few weeks ago. But it's not as bad as the Northern Premier League. Macclesfield, Robbie Savage's Macclesfield have already won that league. In March, they've won the league already. 20 points clear of second they are. Who will move into the National League North. But yeah, it's not quite that extreme. But yeah, I get what you're saying there. And they bounced back, haven't they, Blackpool? Yeah. You mentioned their good run. They hit the stumbling block against Leyton Orient last time. That's their only defeat in 5 games, but they've got straight back onto it. And I think perhaps a bit under the radar, they're the 3rd best team away from home this season. Only Birmingham and Wickham are better on their travels, and they're level on points with Barnsley in terms of how many they've picked up on the road. And it's another good away performance here. And Northampton not an easy team to beat, as much as they're in sort of a difficult patch. That Blackpool have gone there and got a good result. And you just don't want your season to fizzle out. You want to obviously carry on and try and finish as close to the playoffs as possible, even if they're going to struggle to get into them. That it's a good result in that sort of vein of things. And Northampton, perhaps a little bit more important for them, is that they're the same as Bristol Rovers, just 6 points above the drop zone. They were 4 unbeaten heading into this game, but they won just one of those 4 games. It's too many draws, and they need to turn a couple of those into wins if they're going to stay in the division, because themselves and Bristol Rovers are in a real fight to stay above, to keep their head above the power pit, if you like, with Burton chasing, and perhaps a Crawley could sort of come back out of the woodwork with Scott Lindsay. So we'll see on that. But yeah, a disappointing one for Northampton Town as much as it is a good result for Blackpool.
Yeah, Northampton will want to pick up the results and will want to pick up the points to just, I guess, remove themselves as best as possible from that dogfight, and they just haven't done that, have they, in the past few months? You mentioned not winning enough games. Yes, they pick up points, but at this stage in the season, a point is not good enough, really. They want to be winning games, they want to be getting consecutive victories, and they haven't been doing that. And this is another stumbling block in the road for their fight for safety. I guess the only positive for Northampton is the match next week is away to Cambridge, a team that are lower than Mansfield in the table. Sorry, lower than Northampton in the table. Northampton will have the belief that they aren't lower than Mansfield as well, but Northampton will have the belief of going to Cambridge and sort of nicking points, but it won't be easy.
It's a big game.
It is a big game, but it won't be easy. We'll come on to Cambridge's result this weekend, and we see that perhaps they're not as easy as people might think to break down. Just a last shout on Blackpool. Their scorers came from their front 2 of Niall Ennis and Ashley Fletcher, and that's 5 goals for Ennis since coming in from Stoke in January, and 10 goals and 4 assists for Fletcher. A bit of an unconventional front 2. But I think it works. I think Bloxham is slowly coming back from his injury as well, having made such a good impact when he first joined. So certainly lots of reasons to be happy if you're a Blackpool fan. And who knows, just ignore Jamie for now, but who knows, perhaps a late playoff charge maybe.
I think that you could use that sort of universal good rule of thumb. Just ignore what I'm saying and you'll be fine.
You said it, not me. Yes.
But subscribe to the podcast.
Yeah, Please, we need it. We'll move on to my team then. And we mentioned Cambridge United, very good transition there. I mentioned Cambridge playing Northampton next weekend. Well, this weekend they travel to South Yorkshire to play Barnsley. Yeah,
I mean, I guess before I
Let's move on.
I guess before I give it to you, and I mean, sick note Jones this week, but he did make it out to the Barnsley game yesterday afternoon, and they're 12 points adrift to Cambridge, and they don't have the game in hand that we alluded to Burton do have. and a couple of other teams sort of in that mix have as well. But yeah, they've got a point here, and I mean, you'll obviously be able to shed a bit more light on it. But the positive, it's the first point under Conor Hourihane after that defeat to Mansfield in his first game. And it ends a run of 3 defeats in a row. They needed a 92nd minute equaliser to do it. And yeah, a little bit smash and grab, I thought, was sort of how Cambridge were going for it. You'll be able to explain that a bit further. But Cambridge got that goal and seemed to just absorb all the pressure and was caught by that sort of dagger of a late goal, with 2 substitutes combining, Jallow crossing it into Lewis for the goal that got the point. So I'll give you 2 positives there. It's a point for Conor Hourihane and the 2 substitutes combining for the goal. But yeah, still a bad result though, Seb.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah, I think those 2 substitutes you mentioned there, Faber Jallow and John Lewis, I think they will be absolutely in line to start the next game, which is away at Wigan, who themselves have not really got anything to play for. So, yeah, I think they will come to start. Actually, Barnsley changed to a 4-3-3 in the last 20 minutes, and something we've not really seen this season in terms of the wingers actually attacking down the wing, which sounds hard to say, but like actually going at defenders, actually putting crosses in the box, taking on players. It's something we've not really seen with Barnsley under Darrell Clark, and the start of the Hourihane reign it's been possession based and possession focused, whereas actually it's the stats and just get the ball into the box. If it hits someone's backside, if it deflects off someone, then anything can happen. And in fairness, we the best spell came in the last 20 minutes. The goal came from on the cross, a cross into the box, and the best spell was in the last 20 minutes when we were just flooding the ball. Flooding the box and getting the ball into the box from wide areas, and I think certainly that's something that Conor Hourihane will be pleased with going forward. What he won't be pleased about is that as you mentioned, Barnsley have got a late equaliser against second to bottom place Cambridge at home. I think the bottom line is that's really disappointing. It's a chance to get a bit of a good feel-ish around the place. Back Hourihane a little bit, get the players having that winning feeling again after a pro of form, but wasn't to be at all, really. And Cambridge capitalised on a defensive mistake, and Brophy finished really nicely under the goalkeeper's legs, and then having to rely on a last minute equaliser against second ball is not great itself. So especially the first half, it was quite a hard watch. Second half, Barnsley came out and attacked Cambridge, and the play, as I said, sort of played with the men out wide and into the box. And I'm surprised we didn't do that sort of thing from the off, because Cambridge are second to bottom for a reason, and that's no disrespect to them, but evidently, they're not the strongest at the back. So I'm surprised that wasn't something that we looked to capitalise on. But the second half, it came out, changed a few things, changed formation, and attacked them better. Even still, though, we had plenty of chances, including David Kildown missing a couple of good opportunities. Had one against the crossbar in the second half, and first half missed just a few yards out. So certainly question marks for Barnsley. I guess a point is better than none to bring something out of it. But even still, it's a poor.
It's a bad result. It's a bad result. I mean, you mentioned Kilo done there. I mean, it was something I had in my notes. That one he missed in the first half.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, really. I mean, a player who has been in good form, sort of on and off, and has been sort of the talisman, really, for Barnsley this season. That to squander such an opportunity 5-6 yards out, and he put it wide, no one anywhere near him, and he had enough room to swing a cat. Never mind just stand still and put the ball in the bottom corner. But yeah, that was poor, I thought. And Benson, I think it was in the second, someone hit the bar. Maybe it was Killerton, but they were smacking the crossbar, and you eventually got the point in the end. And obviously, that is the positive in terms of just being able to get a result out of it. And something you mentioned there in terms of just putting balls into the box, it's very different than what you spoke about with Callum in the previous show about how much you've been using long balls this season. And it's interesting that is sort of already you've seen that switch, and Conor Hourihane has come in and made that change and not relying on the long balls as much and playing football in a different way. And it'd be interesting to see if that brings a few results before the end of the season, and if they can take that on then to the start of the next season. But yeah, a disappointing result. But yeah, a point is always better than none. I guess the last note to mention on it is the goalkeeper, isn't it? Kieran Flavel making his first start, came on last week pretty early on, wasn't it? It was about sort of 15, 16 minutes in, came on in that game. And I believe a boyhood Barnsley fan. There was a bit of a nice little interview with himself and BBC Radio Sheffield, where he was talking about Conor Horan. I used to watch him. I used to be in the stands watching him, and now he's my coach. I thought that was quite a nice sort of touch there. And how did he get on? I guess is the last question to ask before we move on.
Yeah, he did really well. Perhaps could have gone better with the goal, but that was same for the whole defensive line, really. It was a poor defensive display at the back. But yeah, really well, in fairness, Kieran Flavel from Barnsley. Been at the club since 7 years of age. And there was talks over the week about getting an emergency goalkeeper in, given Flavel is our only fit goalkeeper at the club, other than sort of academy. Adam Hayton's on the bench as well, who's also a goalkeeper from the academy. But I guess that sort of shows the faith and trust that Horan has in him to not bring in an emergency goalkeeper, and he showed that. Came out of his box well, commanded the from the 6-yard area from crosses and corners, etc. And yeah, was quick to play the ball, really, which it sounds really simple, but actually a lot of the attacking phases in the second half of Barnsley had the best chances came from him having the ball and releasing it quickly. So yeah, impressed on debut, a couple of good saves as well, and it's always good to see a Barnsley lad play for the Barnsley side as well. And another Barnsley lad in the stands was Paul Heckingbottom watching on. So I wonder if he's having a scouting mission perhaps for either Adam Phillips or Davis Keeler-Dunn is what's been doing the rounds, but also he's from Barnsley, so maybe he's just using his international break well.
Yeah, returning home for the international break. I know. I saw that on your Twitter X, if you like. The picture of Paul Heckingbottom in the stands. But yeah, no, it's always nice to see sort of he's putting that faith in the youth, and that is important.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to get in the playoffs, you're not going to get relegated, you're going to sit in mid-table. You may as well give the youngsters a chance to shine, and it's nice to see Conor Horan doing that. I guess to bounce off what you were saying in terms of emergency goalkeeper, something we didn't mention when we talk about Crawley, they did bring in an emergency goalkeeper, Timothy Latula, who was at Doncaster last season and kept a clean sheet on debut there, coming in from Hull on an emergency loan. So yeah, that is the one team that did get an emergency goalkeeper, one team that didn't in Barnsley, and trusting the youth instead, which is good to see.
Yeah, and Bland and Shallow off academy products, all part of the team on Saturday as well. So good to see the academy featured. And the final game we're going to move on to chat about in the condensed fixture list is a 0-0. It's Lincoln playing Exeter City, but I guess the 0-0 perhaps doesn't paint a full picture, Jamie.
Yes, yeah, don't undersell it. I mean, there were things to talk about in this game. Two really contentious moments in it. I mean, we never talk about 0-0. And I feel like we get some stick sometimes. We pick certain games over others to try and speak about everyone as much as possible. But obviously, we're getting to cover all the games, being only 6 this weekend. And yeah, this one is the last one on the list, Lincoln Exeter. Lincoln, the better team, just not clinical enough. And they had all the chances, perhaps, like they did last week against Bristol Rovers in the game before against Crawley. They're creating. They're just not putting the ball in the back of the net in this game. Jovan McCarmer had the best chance. Tom Bayliss hit the bar. I mean, McCarmer's been in superb form, so it was a shock that he didn't score, really, the form he's been in. They are 3 unbeaten at home now, which is obviously the positive, but it's dropped points, and it takes them to the 50-point milestone, which was talked up a lot pre- and post-match by Michael Scabala in terms of that being a milestone they wanted to hit, and they've hit that with a point here. Moving on to the 2 contentious moments, the 2 talking points from the game, because, I mean, you can summarise the game as Exeter being very defensive, sitting back, playing the long ball up to McGuinness, who was seemingly, I mean, I watched the UFC last night, and it seemed that the McGuinness and Paddy O'Connor were auditioning for the UFC, some of the battles they were having in the Lincoln back line. But they were unlucky not to get a penalty in the first half, very different to the one in the Wrexham Stockport game, in that he's sort of sliding and he's got his arm in the air, and there's a good few yards between the ball being kicked and it hitting the arm. So I think that's a penalty that Lincoln weren't given very early on, and obviously that would have changed the game. But at the very end of the game, there's a goal disallowed for Exeter for a handball that I mean, I've seen it about 15 times, and I could not tell you how that decision's been made. I mean, he's got the back to the referee, so I'm not sure how the referee's seen what he thinks he's seen, and he's got his arms by his side, and the ball sort of come across him, and it could have hit his arm, it's hit his chest, his arm, he's sort of huddled in.
Yeah.
And it's hit him, but it's impossible to see where it's hit him. and then the ball bobbles, is then kicked in, and then the free kick is given. The free kick wasn't given until after the ball went in. It was all just a bit of a mess. So that's the sort of the takeaway, isn't it, really? That perhaps the draw was fair because Lincoln should have had a penalty and Exeter should have had their goal allowed. So perhaps it should have been 1-1 and that'd have been a bit more interesting to talk about. But we've got two contentious decisions nonetheless. And we're in 6 games to get 3 contentious decisions that we'll talk about. Is some going in terms of League One this weekend. But yeah, have you seen them? I wonder what you think of them.
I've seen the. I've not seen the Exeter one. I have seen the Lincoln one. Yeah, I think it's about right. I think it's one of those where it's hard to tell. It's not conclusive. So I think it's. Yeah, I think it's about right in my eyes anyway. From the angle that I saw, I think. I've not seen the Exeter one, so I can't comment on that one. But certainly the Lincoln one I have seen. I think it was rightly not given in my eyes. Anyway, I think that concludes things for this week. Just to stay as well, that result leaves Lincoln 12th and Exeter 16th. So Exeter 9 points off the bottom 4. So you would imagine well off it. In terms of the relegation battle. Don't forget to subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We are getting ever closer and we could really do with your support. So if you have got to this point in the video and not clicked subscribe on our YouTube page, then please go and press subscribe on our YouTube page.
If you've got this far, if you've listened to us talk about a 0-0, and if you're on podcasts forms as well, a follow or whatever it is there. We're trying to get to 1,000 YouTube subscribers by the end of the season. So and if every little helps, doesn't it? To
exactly that. Give us a rating, give us a review, tell us you love our dulcet tones, and we appreciate any feedback you give us. Sam will be back during the week alongside Callum to preview the full set of fixtures next Saturday. We are back to usual in that we've got 12 games to chat about, and then myself and Jamie will be back similar time next week to dissect all the results. So once again, thanks for listening and watching, and thanks finally to Andy Preston for his views right at the top of the show regarding the situation at Reading FC. And we will be back next week. We'll see you soon.